Im Namen des dreifaltigen Geistes befehle ich dir auszufahren und nicht
Anneliese Michel was born on September 21, 1952, in Liebelfing, Bavaria, West Germany. She was raised in a deeply religious Roman Catholic family. Her parents, Joseph and Anna Michel, were devoutly Catholic and instilled strong religious values in their children. Anneliese grew up with three sisters in the small town of Klingenberg, where the family attended Mass regularly and religious observance was a central part of their daily lives. Anneliese was known to be a kind, happy, and diligent student. She was well liked by her peers and teachers, participating actively in school and church activities. She had a close-knit group of friends and was described as cheerful and conscientious. Her strong faith was evident from a young age, and she was often seen praying or reading religious texts. In her teenage years, Anneliese's life took a drastic turn. At the age of 16, in 1968, she experienced her first epileptic seizure. She was subsequently diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition that can cause seizures, memory loss, and hallucinations. This diagnosis marked the beginning of a long and painful struggle with her health. Despite receiving anticonvulsant medication such as Dilantin, Anneliese's condition did not improve. Over time, she began to experience more severe symptoms. She reported seeing demonic faces and hearing voices that told her she was damned and would rot in hell. These hallucinations were particularly distressing, given her deeply religious background. As her condition worsened, Anneliese became increasingly depressed. She withdrew from her friends and family, her once bright demeanor overshadowed by fear and confusion. She began to exhibit behaviors that were deeply troubling to her and her family, such as tearing off her clothes, compulsively performing hundreds of genuflections, and eating insects. The Michel family sought help from numerous doctors and psychiatrists, but the treatments and medications prescribed did not alleviate Anneliese's suffering. Her symptoms were resistant to traditional medical interventions, and she continued to have seizures despite being on strong medications like Tegretol. The lack of improvement led her and her family to seek answers beyond the realm of medicine. Anneliese's condition worsened further, and she began to exhibit an extreme aversion to religious objects and places. She could not bear to look at a crucifix or walk past a shrine. When taken to church, she would react violently, screaming and convulsing. Her family, deeply rooted in their faith, began to believe that her condition was not merely a medical issue, but a spiritual one. By 1973, the Michel family was convinced that Anneliese was possessed by a demon. Her symptoms seemed to align with traditional signs of possession, including an aversion to sacred objects, violent outbursts, and self-destructive behavior. They sought help from the Catholic Church, requesting an exorcism. Initially, their requests were denied, as the Church required evidence of possession and typically recommended medical treatment first. Despite continued medical treatment, including stays in psychiatric hospitals, Anneliese's condition did not improve. Her hallucinations and aversion to religious symbols intensified. She began to believe that she was possessed and that the demons inside her were taking over. Her family, desperate for relief, continued to petition the church for an exorcism. In 1975, after much persistence in witnessing Anneliese's disturbing behavior firsthand, Father Ernst Alt and Father Arnold Renz were granted permission by the local bishop, Joseph Stangl, to perform the exorcism rites. Over the next 10 months, Anneliese underwent 67 exorcism sessions, sometimes 2 sessions per week, each lasting up to 4 hours. During these sessions, Anneliese would speak in different voices, contort her body into unnatural positions, and demonstrate superhuman strength. She claimed to be possessed by several entities, including Lucifer, Judas Iscariot, and other historical and biblical figures. The sessions were recorded, and these recordings reveal chilling dialogues between Anneliese and the priests. She would often speak in guttural voices, expressing hatred towards religious figures and objects. Despite the intense efforts of the priests, Anneliese's condition did not improve. She became increasingly frail, refusing to eat or drink, claiming that the demons would not allow her to do so. Her health deteriorated dramatically, and by the spring of 1976, she was emaciated and suffering from pneumonia. In her final months, Anneliese's suffering was profound. She believed that her torment was a form of penance and expressed a willingness to endure it for the sake of others. Her parents and the priests, convinced that they were fighting a spiritual battle, continued the exorcisms despite her worsening condition. On July 1st, 1976, Anneliese Michel died in her home. An autopsy revealed that she had died of malnutrition and dehydration. At the time of her death, she weighed only 68 pounds. Her death was a devastating blow to her family and those who had believed in the reality of her possession. Anneliese's death led to a legal investigation and a highly publicized trial in 1978. Her parents and the two priests were charged with negligent homicide. The trial attracted widespread media attention and sparked intense debates about the responsibilities of religious institutions, the treatment of mental illness, and the ethical implications of exorcism. During the trial, the defense argued that Anneliese was possessed and that the exorcisms were necessary to save her soul. They presented the recordings of the exorcisms as evidence of her possession. The prosecution contended that Anneliese's death was preventable and that she had been neglected. They argued that she suffered from a combination of epilepsy and psychosis, and that proper medical intervention could have saved her life. Medical experts testified that Anneliese's symptoms could be explained by her medical condition, and that her malnutrition and dehydration were the direct causes of her death. The court found the priests and her parents guilty of negligent homicide. They were sentenced to 6 months in prison, which was later suspended, and 3 years of probation. The case of Anneliese Michel remains one of the most famous and controversial cases of alleged demonic possession. It has sparked debates about the responsibilities of religious institutions, the intersection of faith and mental health, and the ethical implications of exorcism. Anneliese's story has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and films, most notably the 2005 movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which dramatized the events. Her grave in Klingenberg has become a site of pilgrimage for some believers who view her as a martyr. They believe she suffered to atone for the sins of the world and see her as a symbol of faith and sacrifice. However, skeptics view her story as a tragic example of the dangers of religious fanaticism and the neglect of proper medical care. Anneliese Michel's story continues to resonate, serving as a haunting reminder of the complex interplay between religion, mental health, and human suffering. It challenges us to consider how we understand and respond to extraordinary claims of possession and the importance of compassion and care in addressing the needs of those who suffer. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe.